The Vision Serpent. Divine communication through sacred smoke. The sacred wound. In the obsidian darkness of the temple chamber, where starlight filtered through carved stone windows and copal incense curled like spectral fingers toward hidden gods, Itzel, High Priestess of the Serpent's breath, prepared her body and soul for the most sacred of all divine communications. The ritual chamber deep within Tenochtitlan's Temple of Quetzalcoatl had witnessed this ceremony countless times across generations. But tonight would be different. Tonight, the gods themselves had demanded direct communion through the ancient pathway of sacred blood and visionary smoke. The obsidian blade that lay upon the altar before her caught the flickering light of the sacred fire, its edge sharp enough to split a hair, yet spiritually consecrated to serve as an instrument of divine communion, rather than mere cutting tool. This blade had been crafted by master artisans, whose knowledge of volcanic glass had been passed down through centuries of temple service, its surface polished to mirror-like perfection, while its spiritual power had been awakened through elaborate blessing ceremonies that connected it to cosmic forces operating beyond ordinary reality. Itzel's hands trembled slightly as she lifted the blade, not from fear but from the spiritual energy that already began to flow through her consciousness, as she prepared to open the sacred wound that would enable direct communication with divine beings. For 20 years she had served as one of Tenochtitlan's most accomplished Vision Serpent practitioners, but each bloodletting ceremony remained as profound and transformative as her first tentative attempt to pierce the veil between dimensions. The bloodletting rituals that enabled Vision Serpent manifestation were far more than acts of self-mutilation or primitive shamanic practice. They represented sophisticated spiritual technologies that had been refined over centuries of Mesoamerican religious development to create reliable method for transcending ordinary consciousness, while establishing communication with supernatural beings whose guidance was essential for maintaining cosmic order and human welfare. The tongue piercing that Itzel now prepared to perform served as the primary gateway for Vision Serpent communication, because the tongue was understood to be the seat of divine speech, the organ through which cosmic truth could be articulated in human language. The pain that accompanied the piercing created alterations in consciousness that enabled spiritual perception, while the blood that flowed from the wound provided the life force necessary to nourish supernatural beings and encourage their manifestation in visible form. The sacred paper that Itzel had prepared for this ceremony consisted of bark cloth that had been specially manufactured and consecrated for ritual use. The strips of this holy material would be drawn through her wounded tongue, absorbing the precious blood, while creating physical anchors for the spiritual entities that would manifest during the visionary experience. Each strip carried sacred symbols and prayers written in the ancient script that enabled communication with divine beings, while providing protection against malevolent spirits that might attempt to interfere with the ceremony. The bloodied papers would then be burned in the sacred brazier that occupied the center of the ritual chamber, creating the copal-scented smoke through which the Vision Serpent would manifest its divine presence. The transformation of blood into smoke represented a fundamental alchemical process that converted material substance into spiritual energy, while creating visible forms that could bridge the gap between human and divine consciousness. As Itzel pressed the obsidian point against her tongue, feeling the sharp sting of piercing flesh, followed by the warm flow of blood that would soon become divine communication, she spoke the ancient prayer that had opened countless Vision Serpent ceremonies. Sacred blood, sacred breath, sacred transformation. Let the serpent wake from cosmic sleep. Let divine wisdom flow through mortal wound. Let heaven speak through earthly sacrifice. The pain that shot through her mouth was immediately transformed from mere physical sensation into spiritual energy that began to alter her consciousness, while opening pathways of perception that remained closed during ordinary states of awareness. The metallic taste of blood mixed with the aromatic smoke of copal resin, while her vision began to shift and shimmer as supernatural forces responded to her offering of life force and spiritual intention. The drops of blood that fell onto the sacred papers carried within themselves the concentrated essence of her life energy, each crimson spot containing spiritual information that would enable divine beings to understand her intentions, while providing them with the material substance necessary for manifestation in visible form. The blood was not merely liquid but condensed consciousness, life force that could be transformed into communication medium through appropriate ritual technology. The first paper strip that Itzel drew through her wounded tongue became saturated with blood while absorbing her prayers and spiritual intentions, creating a physical object that served as both offering and communication device. The sacred symbols written on the paper combined with the blood to create talismanic objects, whose burning would generate specific types of spiritual energy while attracting particular classes of divine beings. As she placed the bloodied paper into the brazier's flame, watching it curl and transform into ascending smoke, Itzel felt the familiar sensation of consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of individual identity while connecting to cosmic forces that operated on scales incomprehensible to ordinary human awareness. The Vision Serpent was beginning to wake from its eternal slumber, preparing to manifest divine wisdom through the medium of sacred smoke and transformed blood. The serpent awakens. The transformation of sacred blood into visionary smoke created atmospheric conditions within the temple chamber that enabled supernatural manifestation, while altering the fundamental nature of space and time in ways that permitted direct communication between human and divine consciousness. As the copal-scented smoke rose from the burning papers, carrying with it the concentrated life force of Itzel's offering, the very air began to shimmer and pulse with energies that existed beyond normal sensory perception. The smoke itself was not merely the byproduct of combustion, but became a living medium through which divine beings could assume visible form, while maintaining their essential supernatural nature. The particles of burned blood and sacred resin carried spiritual information that enabled communication across dimensional boundaries while providing the material substrate necessary for otherworldly entities to interact with earthly consciousness. The first manifestation of the Vision Serpent appeared as subtle movements within the rising smoke, patterns and currents that suggested the presence of an enormous supernatural being, whose body was composed of transformed spiritual energy. The serpent's form was both visible and invisible, substantial and ethereal, present in the chamber while simultaneously existing in cosmic dimensions that transcended ordinary spatial relations. The size of the manifesting entity defied normal understanding of physical space, as the Vision Serpent's body appeared to extend far beyond the confines of the ritual chamber, while simultaneously being contained within the rising column of sacred smoke. Its scales caught and reflected light that seemed to emanate from within the smoke itself, creating iridescent patterns that shifted and changed as divine consciousness moved through its supernatural form. The feathered plumes that adorned the Vision Serpent's massive head identified it as a manifestation of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent deity whose wisdom encompassed both earthly knowledge and celestial mystery. These divine feathers moved with autonomous life, creating patterns and configurations that communicated complex theological concepts while demonstrating the being's intimate connection to both terrestrial and aerial realms. The eyes of the Vision Serpent blazed with supernatural intelligence that encompassed knowledge accumulated across cosmic ages, while reflecting wisdom that transcended individual understanding or cultural limitation. When these divine eyes focused upon Itzel's consciousness, she felt her mind expanding to accommodate concepts and perceptions that normal human awareness could never contain, while receiving direct transmission of spiritual knowledge that bypassed language and logical thought. The voice that emerged from the Vision Serpent spoke without sound, communicating through direct transfer of meaning into Itzel's consciousness, while bypassing the normal channels of auditory perception. This divine communication carried multiple layers of significance that unfolded within her awareness, like blossoming flowers, each revelation leading to deeper understanding, while raising new questions that required additional spiritual development to comprehend fully. The prophetic visions that flowed through the serpent's divine communication included images of future events that would affect both individual communities and cosmic processes, warnings about potential dangers that required human intervention, and guidance about ritual activities that could maintain proper relationships between earthly and divine realms. These visions were not fixed predictions, but dynamic possibilities that could be influenced through appropriate human action, while serving as guidance for wise decision-making. The technological instructions that the Vision Serpent transmitted included detailed knowledge about agricultural techniques,
astronomical calculations, and ritual procedures that could enhance human welfare while maintaining cosmic balance. This practical wisdom was seamlessly integrated with spiritual teaching, demonstrating that divine beings were concerned with material prosperity as well as metaphysical understanding. The healing knowledge that formed another component of the serpent's communication included information about medicinal plants, therapeutic techniques, and diagnostic methods that could address both physical ailments and spiritual diseases. The Vision Serpent revealed connections between various diseases and cosmic imbalances, while providing specific instructions for treatments that addressed both symptoms and underlying spiritual causes. The artistic inspiration that flowed through divine communication included visions of architectural designs, sculptural forms, and ceremonial objects that could serve both aesthetic and spiritual functions. The Vision Serpent showed Itzel detailed plans for temple modifications that would enhance their effectiveness as communication centers, while providing specifications for ritual implements that could facilitate future divine content. The musical revelations that accompanied other forms of divine communication included sacred songs and rhythmic patterns that could induce specific spiritual states, while creating harmonic frequencies that attracted beneficial supernatural beings. These divine compositions incorporated mathematical relationships that connected earthly music to celestial harmonies, while providing powerful tools for consciousness transformation. The calendrical knowledge that the Vision Serpent transmitted included precise astronomical information that could improve the accuracy of temporal calculations, while revealing cosmic cycles that influenced everything from agricultural activities to political decision-making. This chronological wisdom enabled more effective coordination between human activities and divine will, while providing insights into the deeper patterns that governed historical development.
As the divine communication reached its climactic intensity, Itzel felt her individual consciousness merging temporarily with cosmic awareness, while retaining sufficient personal identity to remember and record the wisdom being transmitted. This mystical union represented the ultimate goal of Vision Serpent practice, the achievement of direct divine communication that transformed human understanding while maintaining the individual spiritual development necessary for effective service to both divine and earthly communities. The sacred plants, the botanical allies that enhanced and facilitated Vision Serpent communication, represented another dimension of Mesoamerican spiritual technology. Plant medicines whose consciousness-altering properties had been discovered and refined through centuries of careful experimentation and religious application. These sacred plants were not merely psychoactive substances, but living spiritual entities whose cooperation was essential for achieving reliable communication with divine beings. Olioki, the sacred morning glory, whose seeds contained powerful visionary compounds, served as one of the primary plant teachers in Aztec shamanic practice. The spiral patterns of its flowers reflected the cosmic geometry that governed universal structure, while its climbing growth habit demonstrated the soul's potential for transcending earthly limitations through spiritual development. The seeds of this sacred vine were carefully harvested during specific lunar phases, while being blessed through elaborate ceremonies that honored the plant's divine consciousness. The preparation of olioki involved grinding the seeds into fine powder that was mixed with water or pulque to create a bitter-tasting beverage whose effects could last for many hours. The consumption of this sacred medicine required extensive purification and spiritual preparation to ensure that the visionary experience would serve divine rather than selfish purposes, while providing protection against negative entities that might attempt to manipulate vulnerable consciousness. The visions induced by olioki typically began with geometric patterns that gradually evolved into complex symbolic displays containing prophetic information and spiritual teachings. The plant consciousness communicated through visual metaphors and archetypal images that conveyed meaning beyond the capacity of ordinary language, while providing access to knowledge that could not be obtained through normal learning processes. Tiana Nakao, the flesh of the gods mushrooms that grew in highland forests, provided another pathway for divine communication that was particularly favored for healing ceremonies and spiritual initiation. These sacred fungi were understood to contain the actual presence of divine beings who temporarily inhabited human consciousness during the visionary experience, while providing direct access to cosmic knowledge and healing power. The harvesting of Tiana Nakao
required extensive ritual preparation and spiritual purification to ensure that the mushrooms would cooperate with human intentions rather than assert their own autonomous consciousness in potentially dangerous way. The collectors who gathered these sacred fungi underwent years of training in plant communication while developing personal relationships with the forest spirits who governed mushroom growth and distribution. The ceremonial consumption of Tiana Nakao typically occurred in groups led by experienced priest shamans who could guide participants through the visionary journey while providing protection against spiritual dangers that might accompany consciousness expansion. The mushroom consciousness was known to be particularly sensitive to participants' emotional states and spiritual development, providing either profound healing or challenging ordeals depending upon individual readiness and ceremonial context. Tloatzin, the sacred datura, whose powerful alkaloids could produce intense visionary states, was reserved for the most advanced practitioners due to its potentially dangerous effects and the extreme altered states of consciousness that its consumption could generate. This plant teacher was associated with transformation and rebirth experiences that could fundamentally alter personality structure while providing access to cosmic knowledge that required exceptional spiritual maturity to integrate safely. The preparation and use of Tloatzin involved elaborate safeguards and protective rituals due to the plant's reputation for generating experiences that could permanently alter consciousness in either beneficial or harmful way. The practitioners who specialized in datura ceremonies possessed extensive knowledge of antidotes and therapeutic techniques that could counteract negative effects, while maximizing the spiritual benefits available through careful plant patronage. The synergistic combinations of different plant medicines created enhanced visionary states that combined the specific qualities of individual plants, while generating emergent effects that transcended the sum of their separate properties. The master practitioners who developed these botanical formulations possessed encyclopedic knowledge of plant interactions and spiritual compatibility, while maintaining personal relationships with plant consciousnesses that enabled effective cooperation and ceremonial contact. The seasonal timing that governed plant medicine ceremonies reflected both the natural cycles of botanical potency and the cosmic influences that affected visionary experience. Certain plants were most effective during specific lunar phases, while others required particular astronomical configurations to manifest their full spiritual potential. The ceremonial calendars that regulated plant medicine use incorporated both botanical and cosmological knowledge to ensure optimal results. The regional variations in plant medicine practice reflected both local botanical resources and cultural adaptations that modified basic shamanic techniques according to specific environmental and spiritual conditions. The highland practitioners who specialized in mushroom ceremonies developed different methods from the lowland shamans who worked primarily with vines and flowering plants, while coastal practitioners incorporated marine plants and algae that were unknown in inland regions. That prepared new practitioners in plant medicine arts required years of apprenticeship under experienced teachers who gradually introduced students to increasingly powerful plant allies, while ensuring that spiritual development kept pace with access to consciousness-altering substance. These educational processes emphasized ethical development and service orientation while providing technical knowledge about botanical preparation and ceremonial application. The therapeutic applications of plant medicine knowledge included specialized treatments for various physical and mental ailments that required both botanical intervention and spiritual healing. The practitioner healers who integrated plant medicine with other therapeutic modalities possessed comprehensive understanding of the relationships between consciousness, plant chemistry, and bodily health, while maintaining access to divine guidance that directed treatment protocols. The Cos Serpent, the universal serpent consciousness that manifested through sacred smoke and plant medicine visions, represented far more than a local Aztec deity, but embodied cosmic principles that operated throughout creation while serving as the divine intelligence that maintained universal order through constant communication with human consciousness. This cosmic serpent existed simultaneously in all dimensions and time periods, while remaining intimately involved in the daily affairs of earthly existence. The DNA-like spiral patterns that characterized serpent symbolism through Mesoamerican art and architecture reflected intuitive understanding of the helical structures that govern biological organization while representing the cosmic template that guides evolutionary development across all levels of existence. The feathered serpent images that adorned temples and codices depicted this universal life principle in its role as the divine force that brings consciousness into material form. The astronomical associations that connected serpent symbolism to celestial cycles demonstrated Aztec understanding of the correspondence between earthly and cosmic processes, while revealing the serpent consciousness as the organizing intelligence that coordinates planetary movements with biological rhythm. The Venus tables that tracked the movement of the morning and evening star incorporated serpent imagery that identified this celestial body as a visible manifestation of cosmic serpent consciousness. The agricultural connections between serpent symbolism and seasonal cycles reflected the role of serpent consciousness in coordinating plant growth with cosmic energies, while serving as the divine intelligence that enabled successful cultivation in challenging environmental conditions. The Chinampas floating gardens of Tenochtitlan were designed according to serpent-inspired principles that maximized agricultural productivity through harmony with natural force. The medicinal applications of serpent symbolism included therapeutic techniques that channeled cosmic serpent energy for healing purposes, while utilizing venom-based medicines that transformed poison into remedy through appropriate spiritual preparation. The priest healers who specialized in serpent medicine possessed detailed knowledge of snake behavior and physiology, while maintaining communication with serpent consciousness that guided treatment protocol. The martial arts traditions that incorporated serpent movements and consciousness provided warriors with combat techniques that combined physical skill with spiritual power while enabling access to serpent wisdom during battle situations. The elite warrior societies that adopted serpent symbolism developed fighting methods that emphasized flexibility, stealth, and sudden strikes that mimicked serpentine hunting behavior while channeling cosmic serpent energy for protection and effectiveness. The architectural principles that governed temple construction incorporated serpent consciousness through building designs that facilitated divine communication while creating physical structures that served as permanent manifestations of cosmic serpent energy. The stepped pyramids that dominated Mesoamerican ceremonial centers were understood as artificial mountains that provided access to celestial realms where serpent consciousness operated in its most elevated form. The textile traditions that preserved serpent symbolism through woven patterns and embroidered designs created portable talismans that maintained connection to cosmic serpent consciousness, while protecting wearers from harmful influence. The master weavers who specialized in serpent patterns possessed both artistic skills and spiritual knowledge that enabled them to create textiles with genuine magical properties. The musical traditions that incorporated serpent consciousness through specific rhythms and melodies created sonic environments that facilitated Vision Serpent manifestation while providing harmonic frequencies that attracted beneficial spiritual influence. The serpent songs performed during vision quests and healing ceremonies utilized scale patterns and rhythmic structures that reflected cosmic serpent consciousness, while inducing appropriate altered states of consciousness and participation.
The mathematical concepts that emerged from serpent symbolism included sophisticated understanding of spiral geometries and recursive patterns that governed natural growth processes, while providing numerical relationships that connected biological organization to cosmic structure. The calendrical calculations that regulated ceremonial timing incorporated serpent-inspired mathematical principles that ensured accurate synchronization between earthly activities and celestial influences. The artistic techniques that manifested serpent consciousness through visual media included sculptural methods, painting styles, and decorative approaches that captured essential qualities of serpent energy while creating artistic objects with genuine spiritual power. The master artisans who specialized in serpent art possessed both technical expertise and mystical understanding that enabled them to create works that served as permanent gateways for divine communication. The philosophical implications of cosmic serpent consciousness included sophisticated understanding of the relationship between individual and universal awareness, while providing frameworks for spiritual development that honored both personal growth and service to cosmic purposes. The theological schools that preserved serpent wisdom transmitted both practical techniques and theoretical knowledge that enabled graduates to serve as effective intermediaries between human communities and divine consciousness. The international connections that linked Aztec serpent traditions to similar practices throughout the Americas demonstrated the universal nature of serpent consciousness, while revealing the shared spiritual heritage that connected diverse indigenous cultures across vast geographical distances. The trade networks that exchanged serpent-related artifacts and knowledge created cultural synthesis that enriched local traditions while maintaining connection to cosmic serpent consciousness. The price of vision. The profound spiritual power that accompanied successful Vision Serpent communication came at a cost that extended far beyond the physical pain of bloodletting to encompass psychological, social, and metaphysical challenges that could overwhelm practitioners who lacked sufficient preparation or spiritual maturity. The expansion of consciousness that enabled divine communication also exposed human awareness to cosmic forces and spiritual realities that could shatter unprepared minds while creating responsibilities that demanded complete dedication to divine service. The physical toll that repeated bloodletting ceremonies exacted upon practitioners' bodies required careful balance between spiritual necessity and bodily health, while demanding medical knowledge that could prevent infection, excessive blood loss, and other complications that might result from frequent ritual wounding. The master practitioners who maintained Vision Serpent communication over decades developed specialized techniques for wound care and recovery, while building physical resilience that enabled sustained spiritual practice. The psychological effects of regular contact with cosmic consciousness included challenges to personal identity and individual ego structure that could create mental instability in practitioners who lacked sufficient spiritual grounding or emotional maturity. The visions of universal truth and cosmic scale that accompany divine communication could make ordinary human concerns seem trivial, while creating difficulty in maintaining motivation for daily activities and social relationships. The social isolation that often accompanied advanced spiritual practice resulted from the difficulty of communicating cosmic insights to individuals who lacked visionary experience, while maintaining normal relationships with family members and community members who could not understand the demands and responsibilities of divine communication. The priest-shamans who dedicated their lives to Vision Serpent work often became isolated from ordinary social life, while developing intense bonds with fellow practitioners who shared similar spiritual experiences. The karmic responsibilities that accompanied access to divine knowledge include obligations to use cosmic insights for community welfare rather than personal advantage, while accepting the burden of serving as intermediaries between human and divine realms, regardless of personal convenience or individual desire. The practitioners who received prophetic visions became responsible for warning communities about potential dangers, while providing guidance that could influence crucial decisions affecting many lives. The spiritual dangers that accompanied Vision Serpent practice included encounters with malevolent entities that could masquerade as beneficial beings while attempting to manipulate human consciousness for destructive purpose. The protective techniques that safeguarded practitioners during visionary experiences required extensive knowledge of spiritual warfare and entity recognition, while maintaining personal purity and spiritual strength that could resist negative influence. The addictive potential that some individuals displayed toward visionary experiences created additional challenges for spiritual teachers who had to balance students' enthusiasm for mystical practice with the need for gradual development and appropriate integration of cosmic insight. The practitioners who became obsessed with visionary states while neglecting practical responsibilities or spiritual development often experienced psychological breakdown or spiritual corruption that required intensive therapeutic intervention. The family conflicts that arose from dedication to Vision Serpent practice included marital problems, child neglect, and clan disputes that resulted from the time demands and behavioral requirements
of advanced spiritual work. The spouses and children of Vision Serpent practitioners often struggle to understand the necessity of ritual obligations, while competing with divine service for attention and emotional energy. The political complications that could arise from prophetic visions included conflicts with governmental authorities when divine revelations contradicted official policies or challenged established power structure. The practitioners who received visions critical of rulers or institutional practices faced persecution, exile, or execution, while struggling to fulfill their obligation to transmit divine warnings, regardless of personal consequences. The economic burdens that accompanied Vision Serpent practice included the costs of ceremonial materials, plant medicines, and ritual equipment, while accepting reduced earning capacity due to time devoted to spiritual activities rather than practical labor. The communities that supported Vision Serpent practitioners provided material sustenance in exchange for spiritual services, while expecting consistent access to divine guidance and healing power. The health risks that accompanied plant medicine use included potential poisoning, allergic reactions, and psychiatric complications that could result from inappropriate dosage or ceremonial context, while requiring extensive medical knowledge and therapeutic skills to address safe. The practitioners who specialized in plant medicine work maintained detailed knowledge of antidotes and emergency procedures, while developing relationships with healers who could provide assistance during crisis situations. The legal vulnerabilities that Vision Serpent practitioners faced in colonial and post-colonial contexts included persecution for practicing indigenous religion, while maintaining underground networks that preserved spiritual knowledge despite systematic efforts at cultural suppression. The practitioners who continued Vision Serpent work during periods of religious prohibition risked imprisonment, torture, and execution, while accepting responsibility for maintaining cultural continuity across generations of oppression. The environmental dependencies that characterized Vision Serpent practice included reliance upon specific plant medicines, ritual location, and natural cycles that could be disrupted by ecological destruction or cultural change, while requiring extensive knowledge of alternative resources and adaptive techniques. The practitioners who maintained Vision Serpent communication in degraded environments developed innovative approaches that preserved essential spiritual technologies while adapting to changed circumstances. The healing serpent, the therapeutic applications of Vision Serpent communication extended far beyond mere physical healing to encompass psychological restoration, spiritual purification, and community harmonization that addressed the multidimensional nature of health and disease, while providing holistic treatment approaches that integrated material and metaphysical intervention. The healer practitioners who specialized in Vision Serpent medicine possessed comprehensive understanding of the relationships between consciousness, cosmic forces, and bodily health, while maintaining access to divine guidance that directed treatment protocols. The diagnostic techniques that utilized Vision Serpent communication enabled practitioners to perceive the spiritual dimensions of illness, while identifying karmic factors, entity attachments, and cosmic imbalances that contributed to physical symptoms. The visionary diagnosis process involved entering altered states of consciousness that provided access to patient information unavailable through ordinary sensory observation, while receiving direct guidance about appropriate therapeutic interventions from divine source. The entity removal procedures that addressed spiritual attachments and possessions utilized Vision Serpent power to identify and extract malevolent beings that could cause physical illness, mental disturbance, or emotional instability. The practitioners who specialized in entity work possessed detailed knowledge of spiritual warfare techniques, while maintaining protection and authority that enabled successful intervention in cases that conventional medicine could not address effectively. The soul retrieval ceremonies that restored fragmented consciousness utilized Vision Serpent communication to locate and recover soul parts that had been lost through trauma, abuse, or spiritual attack, while facilitating integration processes that restored psychological wholeness and emotional stability. These therapeutic rituals often required extensive preparation and aftercare that supported patients through challenging recovery periods while ensuring permanent restoration of spiritual integrity. The karmic healing work that addressed past life influences and ancestral patterns utilized Vision Serpent wisdom to identify historical factors that contributed to present-day problems while providing specific techniques for resolving ancient conflicts and transforming inherited spiritual burden. The practitioners who specialized in karmic therapy possessed extensive knowledge of reincarnation principles and family system dynamics, while maintaining access to divine perspective that revealed connections between past and present circumstances. The plant spirit healing that combined Vision Serpent communication with botanical medicine provided enhanced therapeutic power that addressed both symptoms and underlying spiritual causes of illness, while facilitating patient access to plant consciousness that could continue providing guidance and support long after formal treatment concluded. The healer practitioners who integrated these approaches possessed detailed knowledge of plant properties and spiritual alliances, while maintaining personal relationships with plant teachers that enhanced treatment effectiveness. The community healing ceremonies that utilized Vision Serpent power to address collective trauma, social conflict, and cultural disruption provided therapeutic interventions that restored harmony between individuals and groups, while healing historical wounds that affected entire communities. These large-scale healing events required extensive coordination and spiritual preparation, while generating powerful transformative energies that could resolve long-standing conflicts and restore social cohesion. The environmental healing work that addressed ecological damage and spiritual pollution utilized Vision Serpent communication to restore balance between human activities and natural systems, while facilitating communication with environmental spirits that could guide restoration effort. The practitioners who specialized in environmental healing possessed detailed knowledge of ecological relationships and spiritual geography, while maintaining access to divine perspective that revealed appropriate intervention strategies.
The genetic healing approaches that addressed inherited diseases and family patterns utilized Vision Serpent wisdom to identify DNA-level information and spiritual influences that contributed to hereditary conditions, while providing specific techniques for transforming genetic expression and family karma. These advanced therapeutic methods required extensive knowledge of biological systems and spiritual genetics, while maintaining access to cosmic perspective that revealed potential for genetic transformation. The planetary healing work that addressed global issues and species-level challenges utilized Vision Serpent communication to access cosmic perspective on environmental crisis, social upheaval, and spiritual evolution, while receiving divine guidance about individual and collective actions that could contribute to planetary healing. The practitioners who engaged in this level of healing work possessed global consciousness and cosmic perspective, while accepting responsibility for serving planetary welfare rather than merely individual or community interests. The interdimensional healing techniques that addressed influences from parallel realities and alternative timelines utilized Vision Serpent communication to access information about quantum healing possibilities, while receiving guidance about reality manipulation techniques that could transform present circumstances through conscious interaction with probability fields. These advanced healing approaches required extensive knowledge of quantum physics and consciousness research, while maintaining access to divine wisdom that revealed appropriate application strategies. The ancestral healing ceremonies that restored communication with deceased family members and cultural ancestors utilized Vision Serpent power to bridge dimensional boundaries, while facilitating resolution of unfinished business and transmission of ancestral wisdom that could guide present-day decisions. These therapeutic rituals often provided crucial information about family patterns and cultural heritage, while enabling healing of generational trauma that affected multiple family lines. The living tradition, despite centuries of systematic suppression, cultural transformation, and religious persecution, the essential wisdom of Vision Serpent communication has survived into the contemporary era through underground preservation networks, indigenous resistance movements, and spiritual revival traditions that maintain connection to cosmic serpent consciousness while adapting ancient practices to modern circumstances and cultural context. The indigenous communities throughout Mesoamerica that secretly maintained Vision Serpent practices during the colonial period created survival strategies that preserved essential spiritual technologies while appearing to conform to imposed religious requirements. These communities developed syncretic approaches that honored both Christian and indigenous spiritual traditions, while maintaining access to divine communication through discreetly practiced bloodletting ceremonies and plant medicine ritual. The curandero traditions that emerged during the post-colonial period integrated Vision Serpent techniques with European folk medicine, African healing practices, and contemporary medical knowledge, while providing therapeutic services that addressed both physical ailments and spiritual disorder. These healer practitioners maintained connection to cosmic serpent consciousness while adapting ancient wisdom to serve diverse populations in rapidly changing cultural contexts. The modern shamanic revival movements that have emerged throughout the Americas during recent decades include Vision Serpent practitioners who have studied traditional techniques while developing contemporary applications that serve urban populations and address modern psychological and spiritual needs. These practitioners often combine ancient bloodletting ceremonies with psychotherapy, energy healing, and consciousness research, while maintaining respect for indigenous cultural heritage and spiritual authority. The scientific research that has investigated consciousness-altering practices, visionary experiences, has provided validation for many aspects of Vision Serpent communication, while revealing neurological and psychological mechanisms that explain how bloodletting and plant medicines can facilitate access to normally unconscious information and creative insight. This research has created greater acceptance for indigenous spiritual technologies, while encouraging integration with conventional medical and psychological approaches. The artistic movements that draw inspiration from Vision Serpent imagery and symbolism have created contemporary expressions of cosmic serpent consciousness, while preserving visual traditions that maintain connection to ancient spiritual wisdom. These artists often combine traditional techniques with modern media and materials, while creating works that serve both aesthetic and spiritual functions in contemporary cultural context. The therapeutic communities that utilize Vision Serpent healing techniques provide alternative treatment approaches for individuals suffering from trauma, addiction, mental illness, and spiritual crisis, while offering services that conventional medicine cannot address effectively. These healing centers often combine traditional ceremonies with modern therapeutic modalities, while maintaining connection to indigenous wisdom keepers and plant medicine tradition. The educational programs that transmit Vision Serpent knowledge include both formal academic courses and traditional apprenticeship training that preserve technical information and spiritual understanding, while preparing new generations of practitioners to serve contemporary healing needs. These educational initiatives often bridge indigenous and academic knowledge systems, while creating culturally appropriate training methods that honor traditional wisdom while addressing modern learning requirements. The environmental activism movements that utilize Vision Serpent communications to receive guidance about ecological restoration and environmental protection demonstrate contemporary applications of ancient spiritual technologies for addressing planetary crisis, while maintaining connection to cosmic perspective that reveals long-term consequences of current environmental policies. These activists often combine traditional ceremonies with modern environmental science, while advocating for policy changes based on both scientific data and visionary insights. The consciousness research initiatives
that investigate Vision Serpent communication and related spirit act technologies provide scientific validation for indigenous knowledge, while developing theoretical frameworks that explain how these practices facilitate access to information and healing power that transcends ordinary consciousness. This research often combines traditional techniques with modern monitoring equipment and analytical methods, while maintaining respect for the sacred nature of vision. The international networks that connect contemporary Vision Serpent practitioners provide mutual support and knowledge exchange, while preserving cultural diversity and respecting indigenous authority over traditional spiritual territory. These networks often facilitate training exchanges and collaborative healing projects, while maintaining appropriate boundaries that protect sacred knowledge from exploitation or misuse. The future developments that may emerge from continued Vision Serpent practice include enhanced integration with modern medicine and psychology, expanded applications for environmental healing and social transformation, and greater recognition of indigenous spiritual technologies as valuable resources for addressing contemporary challenges, while maintaining connection to cosmic wisdom that transcends cultural boundaries and historical limitations. Smoke and transformed consciousness continues to offer humanity access to divine communication that can guide individual development and collective evolution, while maintaining connection to cosmic intelligence that operates beyond the limitations of ordinary awareness. The ancient practice of bloodletting and plant medicine that enables this communication remains as relevant today as it was in the temple chambers of Tenochtitlan, providing pathways to wisdom and healing that no technological advancement can replace or improve upon. From the obsidian blade that opens sacred wounds to the rising smoke that carries prayers to divine realms, the Vision Serpent represents humanity's enduring capacity to transcend ordinary consciousness, while maintaining connection to cosmic forces that sustain all existence. In understanding and practicing these ancient spiritual technologies, contemporary seekers gain access to sources of wisdom, healing, and guidance that remain essential for navigating the challenges of any historical period, while contributing to the ongoing evolution of consciousness that connects earthly existence to universal purpose.